we are here to do my book tag that I created several years ago and that I do every single year, which is a best and worst series tag. The reason I do this is because I feel like kind of in the hustle and bustle of year-end lists, sometimes series that may not be the best, but were an important part of my reading experience, or may not have been the worst, but were a notable part of my reading experience, they just don't necessarily always make the lists of individual books that I'm talking about. So I find this a helpful way to kind of take stock of my series reading as a whole in a year and to talk about it and get into it with you guys on, hey, here's how my series reading went this year. So without further ado, let's dive into the questions. So, what is the best series that you caught up with this year that is still a work in progress? I had struggled on this one. I'm gonna say Anchor and Aspect by Ruby Dixon, just because I do really enjoy the world building in it, and I think that the individual stories are usually pretty interesting. I would give that series as a whole a 3.5 probably, maybe a 4, but I think of the ones that I caught up with, I'll say that it was the best. It's a fantasy romance series. I struggle to call it romantasy. When I hear romantasy, I think like new adult, and this is not new adult. This is speculative romance for adults. So similarly, the next one is what's the best work in progress series that you are still catching up with. That I put The Deadlands by Katie Wilde, which is also a fantasy romance series. I would also not necessarily think of it as romantasy because I don't think it has the new adult element to it. But I really like that series. It is kind of like barbarian romance, so there's a lot of like morally gray characters in the mix, and at least one, if not 2 entries came out this year, and I have not read them yet, so I need to do that. I need to fix that ASAP. The alternative question to this one is what is the best completed series that you're still catching up with? I put The World of the White Rat by T. Kingfisher. I read the Clockwork Boys duology and loved it. So I can't wait to read Sword Heart and then the 3 Paladin books to complete that series as a whole. I'm very much looking forward to that. 3 is what's your favorite first book in a series this year? I decided to go with A Morbid Taste of Bones, For Bones, which is the first book in the Brother Codfell series by Ellis Peters. This is a series that had been recommended to me for years, and I finally picked it up because of a reading vlog challenge I was doing, and it was an absolute delight. It was as good as everyone told me it would be. It wasn't like an all-time favorite, but it was definitely enough for me to say like, oh yeah, I need to put this series in the mix because they're kind of cozy-ish, but they're historical, so they don't feel twee or kind of like cutesy. It really works for me. So yeah, Brother Codfell. Number 4 is what is the first book in a series you read this year that you think should have just been a standalone, not a series? I didn't have a specific one for that this year. The closest thing I could say is that The Chronicle of the One, which is the A. Nora Roberts dystopian trilogy, I read year 1 last year, the year before, and I liked it. I think that it should have been a standalone. I think that she should have condensed year 1 a little bit, made that the first half of a book, and then the second half of the book should have been what Of Blood and Bone was starting to get into. But that's just my opinion. Far be it from me to dictate to Lenora. Number 5 is what is your most overhyped series of the year? I'm gonna go with the Bill Hodges trilogy from Stephen King. This is one that I had to read for a reading challenge. I was excited to give it a try, and the fact that it had won the, 2 of the 3 books had won Goodreads Choice Awards in their year. Mr. Mercedes was an Edgar Award winner. Pretty hyped, and I was like, oh, this is probably one of the good Stephen Kings, like one of the good, more modern ones. No, not in my opinion. It was okay. It was like 2.5 stars, the first one. I think I gave them better ratings as they went along. So like 2.5 stars, 3 stars, 3.5. And then I had to read The Outsider also for that challenge, which is still in that world. And I gave that a 2.5 or a 3. I don't get it. It's overhyped in my opinion, not for me, and I had to read far more of it than I wanted to. So I feel resentful, on top of feeling deceived about how good it was. Number 6 is, what is a series you DNF this year? I put Armand Gamache. This is a series from Louise Penny, and I read 3 more entries in this series this year. It's just not for me. I got what I wanted out of it. I happened to pick up the books because I was reading the ones that I already owned before deciding if I was going to go back and read more. I actually happened to own the ones where there's a plot line for Gamache's sidekick. I got resolution to that, so I don't need more. So I am DNFing the rest of it. I think it's a series that really suffers from having a macro plot that's like corruption on the force. I think that is not handled well, and therefore the books suffer for the inclusion of that part. The best book was one where that was not as much of a thing. What was your favorite series finale of the year? I'm gonna say, and then 7A is what's your least favorite series finale of the year. Favorite, I'll say The Perfect Hope by Nora Roberts, which was the finale to the In Boonesboro trilogy, just because it's a finale that really rewards the reading of the trilogy up to that point. It's not one you should read out of order. The characterization suffers, I think, in that book, but just like the dynamics and just the experience of reading it while I was staying at the end that it's set in, it was just lovely, and it was a great way to end that experience. And then the least favorite, I'm probably gonna say the finale to the Heroes of Olympus series. Can't even remember what it's called right now. I read that at the very beginning of the year, and my memory is that, not that it was terrible, but just that the end of the Percy Jackson series is so good, in my opinion. It's the best book of the 5. And this one felt just like not as good, and the number of point of views in these books, I think, really makes the Heroes of Olympus less successful than Percy Jackson. Not just because it's like, oh, we want to be back with the people we know. We do have a lot of the people we know. We just have too many characters and too many points of view, so it just felt over full. Number 8 is, what's the biggest cliffhanger you had in a series this year? I didn't really have a big cliffhanger, to be honest, but the closest thing I could think of is the Kate Daniels Wilmington Years spinoff, just because it's interesting seeing how things have developed since we were last with Kate Daniels. So the more we're finding out about that, the more intrigued I am. So like, I am very interested to see what all we find out in the next book, for sure. Number 9 is, what's your favorite spin-off series you read this year? I'm gonna say the Ice Planet Clones by Ruby Dixon, because I really enjoyed both Rajal's Resonance and Surviving Scar. I really like that it's sort of as it says in the title, there's these clones who we've been seeing in other series, and now because it's all a connected world, they're coming into the Ice Planet realm. Yeah, it's sort of like existentialism. I like sort of a la the Barbie movie of like, am I real? What does it mean to be real? If I'm a clone, like, am I really myself? That's a lot of what it's kind of exploring. So I think that has been a fun angle. 10 is, what is your most anticipated next book in a series that you read this year that will come out next year? I just put Side Changeling because that's kind of always true. I'm always excited for that. I am very ashamed that I have not yet gotten you an episode about the book that came out this year. I didn't do it immediately when I finished reading it, and that was a mistake. And I've learned from that, and I will rectify that next year when Primal Mirror comes out. But anyway, I'm always excited for a new Side Changeling book to come out. Number 11 is, what is your most anticipated series to catch up with next year based on what you read in that series this year? Or what is the series you're most excited to stay caught up with next year based on what you read in the series this year? I didn't really have a question or an answer for like what I've read this year that I want to catch up with. Just in general, I'm really excited for Mirrored Heavens that's supposed to come out next year from Rebecca Roanhorse. It's the finale. That's the finale to a trilogy. is a finale. It's the finale to that trilogy, which I've been loving. Alternatively, most excited to stay caught up with, I guess I could say In Death, because again, I'm always excited to stay caught up with that one. What's your favorite series that you finished this year? Okay, so first of all, right here, I want to toot my own horn. Because of my series check-ins that I've started doing twice a year, inspired by Literature Science Alliance, thank you, Angela. She does them quarterly. I've been doing them twice a year, and it has helped me give so much more focus to finishing series that I had started. And I finished 25 series this year, which I'm very proud of, not to mention all the ones I stayed caught up with. So clap, 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 clap for me. I'm very proud of that. I'm gonna say, when I say favorite series, I think what I mean there is favorite sort of like series that has an overarching plot line. So serialized, I guess, versus episodic. And I am gonna have to say Realm of the Elderlings, because I did finish that at the end of the year. And while they're broken into discrete, trilogies and quartets, really it's an overarching story, and I finished it and it's amazing. I have heard that Robin Hobb is thinking during COVID has started working on a new trilogy. That would be amazing, but that is not for sure. So as of right now, I finished it and it was amazing. And yeah, you guys know how I feel about Robin Hobb and her amazing fantasy, heartbreaking, amazing books. What is your favorite episodic series of the year? I'm gonna say the Chronicles of Barsetshire, or of Barset, I think. Barsetshire? Chronicles of I forget which one is which. But anyway, the Anthony Trollope book set in Barsetshire. I read 4 of those this year, so they were big chunky ones. I'm very proud of myself for getting through those, and it was great. They're pretty episodic. They definitely do have characters who come back in, so like they're certainly interconnected, but each of the stories is pretty discreet. Maybe with the exception of the last Chronicle of Barset. I think that one you definitely need to have read the earlier ones to get, but the other ones I think you can kind of read as standalones if you really wanted to, but don't, because they're just delightful. 4, what is a series you finally bailed on after holding on to it for a long time? I put the Gilead series from Marilyn Robinson because I absolutely adore Gilead. I'd been like hoarding the other books set in that world. And when I started, I think it was Home, I just realized like, no, I don't want more in this world. Like, I just want Gilead to be its own discrete reading experience, and I don't want anything else. So yeah, that was one that I finally bailed on. Number 15 is, what's a series you were most surprised you liked this year? I'm gonna say one that I'm surprised I liked as much as I did is Seven Brides for Seven Alien Brothers. I love that series from Honey Phillips this year. One of my favorite things I read. They just hit the spot for me in the way that Ruby Dixon frequently does. Sometimes Honey Phillips also hits the same spot, and that series did for me. It was lots of like arranged marriages or marriage of convenience kind of tropes, which I like. It had the sci-fi alien romance piece that I love. The character work was great. There was 2 that I thought were a little clunkier, but for the most part, I think I gave almost all of those 4 or 4.5 stars. So I'm surprised I liked that as much as I did. Number 16 is, what is the series you meant to catch up with or finish this year that you didn't? And I'll put the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee here. My intention was to finish that before the end of the year, and that's not gonna happen, but I plan on finishing that before my next check-in on series, which will be in February. So I think I'll read that at the very beginning of 2024. But I plan to finish that this year that I didn't. And then 17, what is a series you finished or caught up with this year that you think is greater than the sum of its parts? For this one, I definitely wanted to say First Law by Joe Abercrombie, because I believe I gave each of those books 4 stars, but I would give that trilogy as a whole 4.5 stars. I thought that was one of my favorite like reading experiences for the year. Some of that was that I buddy read it with Leanna, so her excitement for that series is definitely infectious. But yeah, that series is really cool. Like the end of the second book, it makes a very bold move that I thought was so fun, and definitely took it up a notch for me. It is a lot of like war stuff, which is not my favorite fantasy stuff, which is probably why on a book to book level, it didn't feel like more than a 4. But if I think about the story it told as a whole, definitely a 4.5. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think once I get through some more, probably like August-ish next year, maybe 2025, I do want to read more in his overall First Law world, because I know he has a number of standalones and other series. So once I get through some of my backlog of series, that is one that's definitely on my radar to keep going in. But yeah, I would definitely say that one was greater than the sum of its parts, for sure. So yeah, that was this year's best and worst series tag. You're definitely welcome to do it if you would like. I have the questions listed below. And like I said, I enjoy doing this every year just as a way to like check in with myself about how series reading went. I think now that I'm doing check-ins twice a year, it's a little less necessary because I have that kind of built-in check. But it is still, I like at the end of the year to highlight to you how my series reading went. I don't know if you could tell when I said like, oh, I don't really have an answer to that, or I don't know about that. In general this year, I feel like my reading was kind of just like good, but not great. And I think that's reflective in some of the answers or lack thereof in some of these. Like when I was going through the questions, I was like, oh, I don't feel as passionately about these as I normally do. So anyway, maybe I'm just dead inside. That's also a possibility. All that to say, let me know how your series reading went. Let me know what you thought about any of the books I discussed. And yeah, I think that will do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!